Welcome to everyone who is joining us. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm really excited about this event. Conservation efforts as well as Uganda in particular are two things that I hold very close to my heart. If you're just joining us, feel free to type in the chat for where you're joining from. I see we have Tanner's in New Jersey, Lindsay's in Utah, Sarah's coming from London. Marie, welcome. She's in Philly. And we have Hannelore in Belgium, another person from London. So great to see so many people from around the world. If we have not connected before, my name is Kelly, and I am the founder and executive director of Impact Travel Alliance. We represent the world's largest community for socially and eco-conscious travelers, and we help to arm you with the resources and tools in order to be able to make informed decisions about how to travel in a way that supports local communities and protects our world. So today, we're continuing our conversations on the ethics of travel during the pandemic. If you've joined some of our previous events, you know that we've talked about road trips and indigenous tourism. We've also talked about the Caribbean and balancing safety versus the economy. So we're really trying to dig in deeper to some of these topics about travel right now and talk about how while it seems like it's just a conversation on the surface about whether you should or shouldn't travel, there's all of these different nuances that go into making a decision to travel. So we're really trying to arm you all with resources to make informed decisions and also let you know some of the impacts that are happening around the world because the tourism industry has been brought to a standstill. Today we are talking about the perils of undertourism. Undertourism last year was a really big buzzword because it sounded like a great way to combat overtourism, which, as you all know, is when you have too many tourists in a destination and you don't have the infrastructure to be able to support that amount of tourists. Undertourism, on the flip side of that, could be traveling off the beaten path, or it could be traveling in the off season. And on the surface, there's some really great benefits to undertourism, but when the industry was brought to a standstill from the pandemic and you have no tourism, that has negative impacts as well. So our guest today is James Nadiope. He's joining us from Uganda. He is the CEO and founder of Justice Tourism Foundation, and I am so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and I'm so excited to be part of this event, and I'm looking forward to share ideas and receive also from the other participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know when we were talking last time, I'm so grateful to Tanner from Off-Season Adventures. Off-Season Adventures is our partner for today's event, and he's who introduced us originally. And when we were talking, just so everyone has some insight, so one of my first international trips abroad was in Uganda. Well, not first, my first professional trip abroad. And in talking to James, I actually was like, hold on, wait, I'll be right back, because everything that you were talking about was bringing back so many memories of how special this place is. So I wanted to start off with a little anecdote about this souvenir. And this is what I showed James last time when we were talking. So I'm going to share my screen really quick as well. And when I was in Uganda, I took this picture of a gorilla, and I shot this on my iPhone. It is just a cell phone shot, and it was so powerful to be there and to see this mother gorilla in the wildlife. I went back into the community, and this is in Wendy National Park. For reference on this region, this is Uganda over here, and Kampala is right here. And I am sorry, guys. I live in Brooklyn. And Wendy is over in this region. And what I think is really special about this experience, beyond just being able to see wildlife like this in person, is the people that you meet. And this gorilla, I went back and I was so excited to be able to see these gorillas in real life. And I was looking at some of the souvenirs that were handmade. And as I'm sorry, there's all of these distractions today. So as I was back and I was looking at these souvenirs, the man asked me, which gorilla did you see? And I told him that I saw this mother gorilla. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. Even though he had probably 36 or so hand-carved gorillas in front of him, he told me that he didn't have that specific gorilla. So he asked me, when are you leaving? And he told me that he would make one specifically for me that was carved after the specific gorilla that I was so excited about. And I'm going to just answer this. Sorry, guys. And so the next day I came back and he apologized to me because he said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't have time to finish. I wasn't able to paint it. So my gorilla doesn't look like any of the other gorillas from the region, but I actually kind of love it this way. And I was like, no, it's perfect. And I think that story for me really just embodies what the warmth and the hospitality is of the Ugandan people. And so for me, this is such an important topic. James, I love the project that you have and how you're so focused on not just showcasing the power of nature, but also how tourism can support local communities through being able to go on some of these experiences as well. So with that in mind, could you tell everyone a little bit more about justice tourism and the model that you all use?
Yeah, with Justice Tourism is a nonprofit organization, nonprofit tourism organization, and we are doing tourism differently from the other, what would call the traditional or conventional tour companies. The difference is that the tour companies are more like private-owned companies, and all the money that the tourists pay to do tour excursions through these tour companies is more like it belongs to one individual or to a family, and it's more like a profit going to one individual or to one company or to one family in that kind of focus. Whereas Justice Tourism, as a non-profit organization, our focus is on mobilizing the tourists that are more conscious about conservation and about the economic benefits of the local people that are living around the destinations, living around where the tourism activities take place. So when we started the tourism, the Justice Tourism Foundation, we were trying to find a solution on how the local people would also be inclusive in the tourism chain and how they could benefit from the tourism dollar or from the tourism money or from the tourism industry. More especially, we realized that the people basically that are keeping those animals safe, like, in the park, the lions, the elephants, the gorillas and the chimpanzees, we realize that it's the local people that are more doing the protection of the wildlife in spite of the animals invading the local people's gardens with no compensation and destroying their crops with no government compensations, and realize that when the local people rise against these wild animals, then there will be no tourism. For example, there was an incident that happened in the Queen Elizabeth National Park about 2 years ago, about 1 year ago, where a family of these lions invaded one of the local farmers, a cattle keeper, and they killed one of his cattle. And in retaliation, he had to poison 10 lions. So you could imagine that 10 lions dying just because of one cattle. And whereas it's more easier to replace the cattle, but it takes time really to conserve the lions and to keep them. So this is something that was lacking, and there was a gap that we realized that the government of Uganda, the Uganda Wildlife Authority, wasn't doing so much in terms of compensating the local community when their wildlife attacks or destroys their crops. So we had to find a better way on how we could compensate or create an incentive for the local communities to be able to be part of the conservation process. And in that regard, we set up the Justice Tourism Foundation to mobilize tourists that are conscious about conservation, that are conscious about economic empowerment of the local communities that live around the national parks. And so in that process, we began to receive tourists, and in the process, we connect the tourists with the local communities and also with the conservation projects. For example, when tourists come through our organization, they don't only go for the wildlife safari or the game safari or the gorilla trekking safari or for the the chimpanzee safari. They also connect with the local communities, and they're involved in the activities that the local people do on a daily basis. For example, we involve our tourists in tea planting, so they're able to plant the trees, and in terms of that, it's in part of the conservation. They are able to support projects that are run by the local communities, such as the Women Empowerment Program, which women work on stuff like, the crafts, which have become like souvenirs for the tourists, and they are able to sell these stuff to the tourists. And so in that process, some of the money, the tourist money, the tourist dollars, it kind of like comes back to the local community, and it empowers them. It's part of an incentive for them to feel that they are part of the tourism chain, and that way they are able to protect the wildlife and conserve the wildlife, and they realize that they are also beneficiaries from the tourism industry. And so this is something that we are focused on, and which the other tour companies, private companies, are not doing. To them, it's more like a business enterprise, and whereby it's all about profit. And so when tourists come through our organization, they are not only enjoying their tour wildlife excursions or trips, but they're also empowering the local communities. And so this is one of the focuses that Justice Tourism is doing, and we're looking forward, of course, to more and more of the conscious, the responsible tourists that feel like they can connect with the local communities. Yeah.
Hold on to that thought for just a moment, because I do want to I want to talk more about that connection between locals and conservation efforts. But before I do, I'm so embarrassed. Thank you, Julian, for pointing out that I was showing everyone Rwanda instead of Uganda. I had a bus over here honking, the door going off, so I zoomed in too quickly, and I did just want to point out that this is Kampala in Uganda, and I showed you Rwanda. So apologies about that. But again, going back to thinking about this connection between conservation efforts and the locals. Tourism being such a powerful force to be able to help accelerate these conservation efforts. For my trip in Uganda, I was there in 2013, and I know that at that time that there were only 750 mountain gorillas in the world. And as of December of last year, there were just over 1,000 gorillas. And the World Wildlife Fund does credit much of that to the power of tourism within that region. James, I know that we were talking previously about how the industry has been brought to a standstill and there's a lot less tourists right now. And so can you tell me about some of the negative impacts that have happened due to not having as many safaris or gorilla trekking activities going on?
Yeah, as I said earlier, tourism, if it's done the right way or it's done in the proper way, it's a tool, not only for, the enjoyment of the tourists, but it's also a tool for empowerment of the destinations, because if it's done well. And currently, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, as we are all aware, this has affected the travel industry. And of course, when we talk about the travel industry, we are talking about in reference to the tourism industry in a global scale. And with Uganda, tourism is #1 income foreign earner for this country. We get a lot of resources or funds from the tourism industry. Tourism is second, is the first, and then agriculture comes second in Uganda. So when the tourism industry came to a standstill, it had such a severe negative effect, not only on the community, but also to the local site guides that provide services to the tourists, because that was the only source of their livelihood. And, we have people like the porters that carry, the bags for the tourists when they are going for the gorilla trekking or chimpanzee trekking. We have the site guides that also depend on tourism, and these are, the tour guides around each destination. And currently, they are jobless because of the epidemic, and this has affected their livelihood. And then we have, of course, the other service providers too, like the women that the artisans that do the crafts. And as I said earlier, they were selling out these crafts to the tourists, but currently it's not happening now. And so it has also affected their livelihoods. And for the young men who were more energetic, and most of these young men were, I would say that they were previous poachers, and they got reformed. They got back into the normal lifeline and to support our conservation efforts. But as the tourism kind of went on a standstill, some of these young men again went back into poaching. And, I don't know whether you guys were able to, to go through the international news, but this happened probably around March or around April this year, when the local youth went into the jungle, into the Bwindi National Park, where the gorilla trekking takes place, and they killed one of the silverback, and just not that they were really doing that intentionally, but they were in search for the other animals, which they were looking around for, hunting for food, not really for sale, but they were doing this for the sake of getting food on the table. And unfortunately, the silverback charged against them, and they had to spear it and killed it. And so, because of the, all this happened as the effects of the tourism being at a standstill. And of course, not only in the Bwindi, but this has also happened in Kibale National Park, where our base is basically located, where some of the youth were involved again in poaching and getting back into the park and poaching some of the animals, not for sale. They weren't really doing this for sale, but for the sake of putting food on their table. They're hunting for food. So this has kind of like jeopardized our conservation efforts. And the reasons, we would receive again with the communities, and they were like, here we are, we have nothing to eat, and we have families, and we have nothing to do. So in that process, Justice Tourism set up a fundraising campaign to raise funds to be able to give some relief food to these communities. And our fundraising is still continuing currently to see that we raise more money to buy some food for these families, because their livelihood was only depending on tourism, and it's no more currently. So this is what is happening, and the situation has not so much changed. It's still that the people are still lacking what to do, though the tourism industry is kind of like coming up. The airports are opening up, and we are seeing a few tourists coming in and doing the tourism. But as our organization, we are still looking forward to this happening soon, and to see tourism coming in. But currently, the situation has not changed, and we are always on a standby. We always talking to the communities and encouraging them, not to go back into the park. And we are doing the food distribution on almost every 2 weeks. We give out the food to these communities because they are part of us. They are part of the conservation team. And we want to see that all of us, at the end of the day, we come out victoriously, and we are able to say, yeah, we made it, and our animals are safe. Our conservation efforts are still in a process. And so that's what we are doing currently. Yeah.
I think that that's so important to recognize the stories behind why people are poaching. Because I think for us in the United States, we hear so much news that kind of flattens out this conversation and says conservation is good, therefore poaching is bad. And I think that in doing that, the easy thing to do is you kind of associate it with thinking that poachers are bad. And it's really important to tell that story, to understand, number one, that they are surviving. And oftentimes, as you're saying, that's a tragic accident that happened because they wanted to feed their families. And I think that recognizing that is really important, and also seeing how travel and conservation and supporting the local community, all of those efforts are so deeply intertwined.
Yeah, the community, basically, it's not the government. This is what I want to say. It's not the government's effort in line with conservation. Basically, it's the local people, the people that live around the national park. They are the main partners in terms of conservation. And these people, it's like the government has not put so much consideration into finding ways of supporting their, I would say, their livelihood. And in that kind of situation, when the wildlife, for example, attack their cattle, to the local people's animals or the cattle or the goats or the sheep, it's like gold to them because that's part of their livelihood. And sometimes they see tourism as a threat to their livelihood if they are not supported by the government, if they don't get benefits from the tourism. So they don't see why the animals should be kept alive when they are invading their gardens. So our effort basically is to find a way of developing incentives for the local communities to feel like they are part of the tourism industry, because one of the reasons why they are involved in the poaching, as I said earlier, is because they don't see the benefits. They don't see any benefits from the tourists. They don't share the tourism dollar. They don't share the money coming in from the tourists. But as they get that kind of support, when they get involved in the conservation process, and they also start benefiting from the tourism industry, then the money that the tourism leave in these communities by buying the souvenirs, by supporting some community initiative projects such as clean water projects, by supporting some of the local community schools when the tourists come in. Sometimes they able to donate funds to support some of the local project or local initiatives. And those ones become like incentives for the local people to feel, wow, this is great. Let the tourists coming because they are supporting some of our communities and developing them. So this is one of the reasons why, as Justice Tourism Foundation comes in, and we are kind of like lobbying the international tourism industry or the international tourists or the international community, say, you guys, look here, we are doing tourism differently. The money that the tourists kind of like pay to do some of their safaris or barrier tracking, we take 10% out of the tourist money. It goes back, it's invested into the community initiatives by providing clean water to the communities, by building the community primary schools for the community, by developing health centers for the community, by encouraging buying more seedlings for planting trees, which contributes to or promotes conservation. So these are some of the things that we are doing with the tourism dollar. And this becomes as incentives for the local communities to continue to do the conservation and protection of the wildlife in the areas that we are working along. Yeah.
One of the things that you said to me last time when we were talking is that the locals were the protectors of the forest. And I thought that that was a really beautiful way of looking at it when you take this model of tourism that says travelers are interested in seeing gorillas or lions or zebras or whatever that looks like, and you tie that to the economic sustainable development for the community as a whole, and you get this really beautiful model where you have better experiences for everyone who is involved. So I really love that with what you're doing there. One thing I wanted to touch upon as well is I think it's easy to, when you think about conservation efforts, and we're talking about wildlife in Africa, it's easy to start thinking of ecotourism or thinking of even voluntourism and saying that you have to go in order to have a positive impact. You have to stay in an eco lodge, or you have to do something that's very green travel focused. And I love your initiative as well, that I think for me, and so many people say this about Uganda, is that what you really remember from Uganda is the warmth and the hospitality of the people. So can you tell me a little bit more about how your initiatives are going beyond just a safari experience, and how you're helping to connect travelers with locals as well?
Yeah, when we receive tourists in Uganda, we tell them Uganda is not the wildlife. It's not the elephants. Uganda is not the lions. It's the people. It's the people, the culture, the music, the food, their traditions. These are what makes Uganda. And so if a tourist was to come to Uganda and then he goes back and shares his experience with his family and with his colleagues, I think the conversation would not really rotate around the elephants. It'll be about the people. And as I said, Uganda is one of the most hospitable country, I'll say, in Africa, probably in the world. And our culture is so rich. And what we do is like this is what happens literally when the tourists come in and they do the, let's say, the wildlife. And then they do the gorilla tracking and the chimpanzee. And then they ask these traditional, conventional tour companies, and they say, yes, we've done the gorilla tracking, we've done the wildlife game safari, we've done the chimpanzee tracking. Now, what next? Is that all? And then this is where the Uganda Wildlife Authority has the problem, and the Uganda Tourism Board has the problem. They have no solution. And, when all the tourists have done all that, they still have the questions, what next? And so we, as Justice Tourism Foundation, we come in and we say, we do what we call alternative trips or alternative excursions, where we connect the local the tourists with the local people, and they get involved in the day-to-day activities with the local people. We get them into the kitchen, and they learn how to cook the traditional food. We also get them into the gardens, where they are involved with the local people in picking the tea or picking coffee or collecting water from the well together, or feeding the cows together, or digging together. These are the things that have been the highlights of most of the tourists who come through our organizations, that they feel the connection with the local people. They feel that they are one of them. And so this is the thing that we are encouraging when we talk about conscious travelers, when we talk about responsible traveling. It's not just about the getting into the national park, but it's more like connecting with the local people, eating the local food, sharing together with the local, learning a little bit of their language, and visiting their homes, and bring together the things that they do every day, collecting water from the well, digging in the gardens, picking tea in the tea farm, picking coffee in the coffee farm, and cooking together in the kitchen, and enjoying in the evenings the traditional music, the dances. These are the things that as Justice Tourism Foundation, it does encourage most of our tourists to connect. And at the end of the day, it has been the most powerful experience for our tourists. They feel that it's the highlight, it's the it's the whole thing that wraps up their visit into Uganda, and it's the story they take back home from our experience that we've seen. It's the people, the culture, the tradition, and that's what it is. So we prepare these trips, and we encourage our guests to connect with the communities, and at the end of the day, the tourists leave part of their dollars into the community, into the women empowerment, into the local families. And this is what we call responsible travel or responsible tourism. It's like you are encouraging the impact of the local economy to reach the local people at the grassroots level, not just coming in, you fly in and then you get into the five-star hotel, and then there you head to the park and back the five-star hotel, and then you fly out. Then it means you've not seen the country, you've not seen the people, you've not been to Uganda, but we are kind of like bringing the people, the tourists, we are bringing the tourists right onto the ground, right into the grassroots level, and connecting them with the local communities. And that's what they enjoyed the most experience. Yeah.
I 110% agree with that. It's such a powerful experience. And as I mentioned, those memories for me are ones that I hold very close to my heart. My trip to Uganda was actually the catalyst in many ways that led to launching Impact Travel Alliance, because I had all of these experiences in Uganda, again, whether it was guerrilla trekking or going on a safari, but ultimately really just connecting with people. And it was cooking classes, it was sitting next to them, learning how to make the jewelry. So all of these really cool experiences. I was fortunate that I was able to be there for a month. So I had an extended amount of time to really get to know and understand the families that I was interacting with on a day-to-day basis. And I came back to New York City and was really excited about this concept of sustainable tourism and how you can have a positive impact on our world through something as wonderful as travel, just by having these really great interactions with one another. And when it's built in a way that is sustainable, it's better for everyone who's involved. And I came back to New York and I was talking to others about sustainable tourism, and they were like, oh, cool. I volunteered once in Africa, or or they're like, great, like I want to stay at an eco lodge in Costa Rica one day. And I was like, why aren't we talking about sustainability in more of an umbrella for the industry as a whole? Because it's like every single experience can be sustainable. And that's where I believe you really start to see the potential behind the industry. So I think that it's so powerful to take all of those things in a destination as unique as Uganda. And again, talking to you, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm ready to go back. So with that in mind, thinking about going back, I wanted to touch upon a little bit about travel right now. I know that tourism has slowly been starting to resume in the region as a whole. Can you tell me a little bit more about what it's like on the ground right now?
Yeah, currently about, I think it's about like 2 weeks. And when the government opened up the Entebbe International Airport and opened up the borders to international guests, we are seeing slowly the tourists coming over. In fact, a few companies, tour companies, have been able to host the tourists. Even as I talk, there are others that are doing the gorilla tracking, as you know, right now, and also chimpanzee tracking, and what the wildlife too. And so it's still a slow process. It has not, I'd say, picked up as yet. But as for Justice Tourism Foundation, we have already a couple of some bookings for the tourists coming in from January and February, March, and April. In fact, we have a team of 20 people that have already booked with us. They are from the US, from New York, and they are planning to be with us around the mid-April 2021. And so we also have a group that has already signed up for August 2021. And so we're already seeing the people, the guests, the international guests, kind of like trying to get over to Uganda. Of course, the Uganda Tourism Board, working together with the Uganda Tourism Ministry, they have already set up what we call the SOPs, the standard operation procedures for the COVID-19. And so when the guests arrive at Entebbe International Airport, what they have to do is to present their COVID-19 clearance or health certificate to show that they're free from COVID. And straight away they get to their hotel, and then the next day they go to for the safari. And for those that, for example, if they are showing some kind of signs of COVID, they are given a test, and they have to wait for 72 hours to see how the results are, and then they proceed. If they found that they have the virus, then they either stay into the quarantine for the 14 days and they get cleared, or they're free to choose either to return to their original country for the treatment, whichever. But Uganda basically is very much in control. I would say we're in control of the pandemic, and it's not so serious like other countries, and everything seems to be coming back to normal, as I said, right now. And so travel is basically normal now. A lot of aircrafts are coming in. We have Ethiopia Airlines coming in. We have Rwanda Airways coming in. We have Qatar Airlines coming in. We have all these other airlines now coming in, and people are coming in and going out. So the travel industry, I would say, is currently beginning to pick up, but of course, it's going to be a slow process until, as we go into next year, 2021. And so that's the current situation. But of course, as I said earlier, most of the tour companies have been affected. And of course, we as an organization, Justice Tourism Foundation, all our kind of like revenue has been coming through the tourism industry, and it's through our revenue that we are able to support the local initiatives in the communities. But all these have been put on a standstill, and so that's the situation. We are praying that very soon the tourism will pick up, and we go back to the new normal, I would say. So that's the current situation.
Understanding that the tourism industry is going to come back slower, what advice would you have for travelers who do decide to visit to make sure that tourism dollars stay local, and that they're helping, they're not just going to Uganda and their tourism dollars go elsewhere? What's your advice for helping travelers to support the locals?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the tourists should do, kind of like make the right or informed decision, is that I would suggest or recommend for the tourists not to look for these big hotels, like Serena Hotel, Hilton Hotel, Best Western Hotels. These are like 5 or 6 star hotel. I would encourage tourists to stay with the local guest homes or local guest houses, and be able to connect with the local communities. For example, Justice Tourism has our local guest house, which we have set up. And also we have what we call homestays within the community. And we've trained the hosts on how to handle international guests. And we've also done some kind of improvement on the host homes, put kind of like put like a Western toilet for the for the guests there, and but still the accommodation has the African kind of touch, and the only difference is kind of like the toilet and of course the electricity and the compound a little bit cleaner than the others. But I would basically recommend for in order for the the tourist money to remain in the community, let the tourists either book with non-profit organizations their trips with Justice Tourism Foundation or Africa Sustainable Tourism Foundation or any other organization that's basically linked with the local community that supports the initiatives of the local community. In that way, the tourism dollar will be able to reach the local communities. I would really discourage tourists really booking their trips with private companies. Imagine if you're paying all these dollars and it all goes to one family, all goes to one person. And it's like you are enriching one individual who owns the company other than really supporting the entire community with your tourist money. So I would basically encourage 100% if there are tourists up there, let them be a little bit conscious on how their tourism money is being spent by the tour companies. And if they found that these tour companies have no any connections with the local communities, then they shouldn't really book their trips with those companies. They should only look for companies or tourism organizations that are connected directly with the local communities. And they should also be able to show that part of the tourism revenue goes back into the community initiatives, support the water projects, support the local schools, support the health centers, and support the conservation. Because if there is no conservation, then there are no wildlife, and there will be no tourism. So I believe that if the local people are supported, then the tourism industry will still grow and the wildlife will still grow. And just as you mentioned earlier, and you said, when you came in the other time was about 750 gorillas in Windy, but currently the number has really tripled. It has really grown up. And the reason for that is just because of the incentives that are given to the local communities. And they feel like they're able also to be part of the tourism chain. So I would rather encourage the tourists out there to be conscious, to find out where their money goes. And if they realize that, these are private owned tour companies, they shouldn't really book with them. They should book with organizations that are connected with the communities that support conservation initiatives. Yeah.
I'm going to open it up for a Q&A in just a moment. So if you have a question for James, feel free to put that into our Q&A box. But before I do, I have one other question for you, James. First of all, I just want to stress this importance of understanding how conservation efforts are so directly tied to community support and how so often our tourism dollars leave the region when we're not taking the time to be mindful about where we're booking and how we're booking. And I think that having the pandemic right now adds this additional layer of complexity where if you have the privilege right now to be able to travel and you're thinking about visiting a destination and you want to make sure that your tourism dollars are really benefiting it, that it's so important to be incredibly mindful about not only your own safety, but also the safety of the region you're visiting and taking the extra time to really make sure that you're supporting businesses that are having a positive impact on all of these different components of sustainability. For someone who's not able to travel right now, James, are there ways that we can support local initiatives from afar?
Yes, I would say there are a couple of ways on how, for those that are not able to like travel during this pandemic era, they can also support the conservation efforts, by either buying the souvenirs from our women, local women artisans, and that's one of the ways they can, buy those baskets of the mats or, the crafts, like the gorilla kind of stuff. And that means that a lot to the local communities. They can still do that through our organization. We're able to do that. The other part is to support our initiative by donating to our cause, and either towards our conservation efforts. And this can also be done directly on our website. They can go on our website, Justice Tourism Foundation, and they're able to log into the donation part there, and donate to and put aside the donation to conservation efforts, and that also can be done. And the other part is also to, I'd say, of course, we work with off-season adventures, and it's a 501 non-profit organization based, of course, in the US, and they can also either donate towards off seasons, and just say it's funds for Africa, Sustainable Africa for Justice Tourism Foundation. So those, I would say, those are some of the ways, either by buying the souvenirs from the local artisans that we work with in the community, and of course the funds, the money will go direct into helping these communities so that they're able to put food on their table, and not get into the poaching process again. And also if they can donate on our website. So I would say that's the ways they can support us. Yeah.
I just shared in the chat, so everyone has the links. justicetourism.org is James's website. I also shared Second Look Worldwide and Off-Season Adventures. Off-Season Adventures is a sustainable tourism company that's based here in the States. They partner with companies like James's and connect travelers with experiences like this, and also through Second Look Worldwide. It's their 501c3 nonprofit sister organization, and that is connecting tourism dollars directly with infrastructure projects. Marie asked, do you have contingency plans or plans to pivot your business if tourism remains slow through 2021?
Can you say it again?
She said, do you have contingency plans or plans to pivot your business if tourism remains slow through 2021?
Yes, we have plans, and currently we've set up a plan which we call the COVID-19 recovery plan. And currently what we are doing, we've set up, I'd say, a business project which we are working with the local community. And this is the homemade natural soap, which is, of course, we call it organic soap. And we are involving the women and the youth in the process of making this soap, which they are able to sell out to their within the centers of the cities. And we also working with the local community too. We've set up a couple of sewing machines, and they are making the masks, the face masks, to prevent, of course, the spread of the COVID-19. And so, as you're aware, the World Health Organization encourages the washing of hands and also the face mask. And so we felt that during this kind of crisis or situation, we had to involve the local community, the women and the youth, to do this project and be able to sell out their product into the centers and also to the supermarkets, and so they are able to earn a little bit of an income to support their livelihood. And so that's the recovery plan which we are currently working on to sustain our operations and with the community. Other than that, we of course looking forward to the opening up of the tourism, but currently as a tourism organization, we felt that we would do a recovery plan, a recovery project to not just let the community look around and feel idle. So we feel like as much as we are helping them to get their live food, but at the same time, we are supporting them through this initiative of making the face masks and also the organic bar soap. Yeah.
Sarah asked, and this is a little bit connected, I think, were you able to support the families and people that you work with during the COVID period?
Yes, we were 100% able to support, and both our staff and also the local communities. Just as I said earlier, we set up the, if you look on our website, you'll find the a page there which we set up for food relief campaign for people to donate some funds to be able to buy food for the community and for part of our staff. So none of our staff really starved, and some of our members in the community have not starved. We've been able to raise part of the money to support our communities because they are our partners and we work with them, and we are still doing that. Yeah.
I love how you're saying that the community, that's your partners. That's so powerful. Well, we are just about out of time. These events always fly by so quickly. I just posted in the chat, I posted a link to our Facebook group. If you're not already in it, I encourage you to join. We always try to continue these conversations afterwards so we can continue to connect with our community. Some quick housekeeping from our end at Impact Travel Alliance. We're also working on a blog post with additional resources to talk about conservation's tie to tourism and supporting local community efforts. So we'll have a ton more we'll have a ton more resources for you all next week. And we have a ton of upcoming events as well. There's 2 more events in our Reopening Destinations series, the next of which is an effort on November 12th with several of our local chapter leaders. And we are talking about the human story behind travel right now. So we have chapter leaders from all around the world who will be leading focus groups where we're basically able to connect directly with one another and talk about how the pandemic has impacted our communities and look at it a little bit broader than the bubble that we currently exist within, whether that's our own apartment or our own state or anything else in that space. And so we're really looking forward to this event. I think it'll be a great way to connect with other change makers around the world. Last but not least, all of you will be receiving a survey after this event in your inbox. It does have a link to share community feedback. Whenever you all are able to share that feedback with us, it's so appreciated. Our community is the heart of our organization at Impact Travel Alliance. Everything that we do is for you all. And we really want to make sure that we are creating and sharing resources that you find valuable. So I appreciate you taking a couple of minutes to fill that form out. Vinci shared a quick note for you, James, in the chat, and she said, thank you for all that you do for the local communities and the wildlife. I will second that, and I always like to leave the digital mic with our speakers. So James, thank you again for sharing your perspective and story with us and for everything that you do. And I wanted to know, is there anything else that you would like to add to leave our attendees with today?
Thank you. I want to say thank you for the this opportunity. You know, the world looks like it's becoming very, very close. I couldn't imagine that we could get this kind of event just through the internet. You know, I'm so thrilled. I couldn't imagine. But I'm very thankful to everybody who was participated in this event, and I want to say Uganda is now open into tourism, and you know, when we travel, we learn a lot, and it gives us a lot of experiences. And I would like to encourage for those that have never come out of their country, whenever you are, and get this opportunity and to travel and visit Uganda. And we're ready and looking forward to hosting you and to connecting with the local communities and to learn part of our efforts in conservation. So we're looking forward to your coming, and also when you get a chance, you can also look on the website of Off-Season Adventure because they are our partners and we work with them, and so you can look through their planning for some of the trips for next year. And probably you could also look through there and see if you can book with them the trips for Uganda and maybe ask questions more from the Western perspective. But I'm very, very grateful for offering me this opportunity and to be able to share with you about Uganda and the tourism industry around here and the conservation efforts that we are doing. I want to thank you so much and I wish you all the best, and may all God's blessings be upon you, and look forward to seeing you sometime in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. I'm so glad we connected, and I can't wait to come visit when I can. Thank you all. Have a great week.